Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Tonight we have Dr. Lindsey Grabek with us. She's going to be talking to us about a survey that she did and other things. She's also a physician coach, helps with professional women, just finding that balance in life that we struggle so much with. Lindsey, I appreciate this. You've been a big help in our group, Female Physician Entrepreneurs. I saw some of your comments and I thought that it would be wonderful to have you come in and just talk to the
Mhm.
group as far as that work-life balance that so many of us struggle with. I know myself, it's a little bit easier now for sure because my daughter's older, but it's hard having a family and even not just relationships, work, trying to enjoy life. So take it away.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Lindsay. I am an anesthesiologist. I live in the Midwest. I am post call. I worked last night, but I slept well today. So if I seem a little slow, that's why. Yes. I'm a physician, and I guess if you asked me what I do in my free time, I would label it as being an emotional intelligence coach. I got into the concept of emotional intelligence actually. I graduated residency, I started a new job as an attending, and I became a mom all at the same time. And that was a lot. And I got through the beginning parts of motherhood and then just felt this sense of like, what am I doing? Who am I? How do I fit into all of this? And, I went on the self exploration that probably a lot of us do. And for me, I found the concept of emotional intelligence, started learning more about it, started practicing stuff, and it became something for me that was very like it made sense scientifically, I guess, for me why it would be effective. And then also it's sustainable because I'm not just solving any one particular problem, but I'm able to apply the stuff that I do to almost every area so that I can take this new facet of my life with me. So it's kind of like my little I don't know, my little travel bag of tools and tricks and stuff. Um
Lindsay, I'd
so
like
yeah,
to
so
add that
sure.
when I was young, I look at the group, right? And this is what I see, but I'd like you to talk about this as well. I feel like with medical school, like we were so determined, right? It was so determined and through, and it's like
Mhm.
as long as you did the work, you would get through for the most part, most of us, right? Like so you it was
Mhm.
study, 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 the residency, and then you land out and you're like, wait, is this everything I expected? So that's definitely an eye opener. Like when you first start your
Yeah.
career, like, whoa, wait a second. I kind of knew from the beginning, I was like, oh no, this is not what I anticipated. And then the other thing, when you mentioned emotional intelligence, I was not great with my soft skills, I would say.
Mhm.
And that looking back, like when you mentioned emotional intelligence, I think I'm very empathetic, but I don't know as far as emotional intelligence, right? And then the other thing is like, had I think my points were I think a lot of things that I felt or tried to say were spot on, but it was the way that I delivered it was not good. And, if I could go back in my career or for the young ones out there, it, so many of us are unhappy with our job, but we don't know how to
Mhm.
communicate that to people, like to
Yeah.
ask what we want. So this is really like right in line with what I think is so important for women physicians. So please.
Well, you bring up two points that I think for me why I kind of went all in on this and why what I'm trying to do, you know, when I'm not operating or behaving as an anesthesiologist is that, the first we go to medical school, you're pre-med and you're studying for the MCAT or the entrance exam, right? And then you're in medical school and you're taking your step exams and then you're, trying to get the highest score. Then you're trying to get into residency. Then you're trying to get, you're just kind of going and building and building and building. And we're conditioned to do that, right? To be the best and have all these experiences. And then you're just done. But no one's taught you how to switch from like the building phase of your life to the like being phase, right? You somewhere in there you may have gotten married, you may have had kids, maybe you had a divorce, maybe you lost family, you've gone through these tragedies, but no one's taught you how to kind of get out of the rat race and then live. So that's one thing that I gained from studying emotional intelligence. And then like you were saying, I think a lot of the women that I work with feel a sense of like lack of satisfaction or unhappiness, but they may not totally know how to describe it or put it in words or even how to slow down to start thinking about it. And so that was what I gained also, was just a little bit more awareness of what's going on inside of me and what do I do with all of that, you know?
Does anybody have any questions? Stacy, ICM?
No, no, I'm good. I'm happy to listen though.
Lindsey, share with us, a presentation, or if you want to go through the
Sure.
survey, like you tell me how you want to work this.
Well, so I was gonna screen share if I could. I put a little tiny PowerPoint together, if that's okay with you. Let me see what happens here. Okay, so I can screen share, allow to share a window. I want this one. Share this window. Are you seeing my PowerPoint?
Yeah, nice slides. Emotional.
Okay. I'm trying to make it like a presentation view here. There we go. Continue to share. Okay, so I can't see you guys now. I can only see my PowerPoint. I'm okay with that as long as you guys can see.
Yep.
I know we're all busy, so I don't want to take too much of your time. And I also know, Sharon, I think you said you'll record this, so I'm not going to necessarily read it directly off the slides, but just to kind of set the baseline of what emotional intelligence is. I feel like we all sort of have an idea, but maybe we haven't really put a definition to it. So I think, there's a lot of research and a lot of study that goes into it. So the scholarly definition would be something like the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions and to do the same with the emotions of others. For me, kind of like the way I think about it is my ability to stay connected to myself under pressure. So for me specifically as an anesthesiologist, that's helpful. For me as a mom, for me as a wife, all these other things. There's 4 domains of emotional intelligence as defined by Daniel Goleman, who is the psychologist who sort of popularized the concept. So there's self-awareness, or noticing what you're feeling and thinking. There's self-management, or the ability to manage how you respond both internally and externally to what is going on and what you're thinking and experiencing. There's social awareness, which is, Sharon, what you were talking about, the empathy and the ability to do that with others. And then relationship management, or navigating interactions effectively. I'm going to stop there because I'm going to keep talking and then I'm going to ruin my slides. Just briefly, there's so much data out there suggesting why emotional intelligence is important. And honestly, studies will show that the soft skills, or emotional intelligence, communication skills, actually set leaders apart more than the IQ, especially for people like us physicians. We're all, really smart, really driven. We're probably all pretty close in IQ. So what sets us apart is our ability to kind of extend beyond our cognitive ability, and that's where emotional intelligence comes in. So professionally, it allows us to have a greater sense of satisfaction, stronger teams, more inclusive leadership. At home, it helps us have, better coping skills, better relationships, open communication with our families. And for me personally, when I started becoming more serious about this, I felt like training in my emotional intelligence gave me what my medical training didn't. I was talking about that transition after I got out of residency. And then it's like I was just going and going and going, and then I was done. And I felt like I was just free falling, right? I didn't know what I couldn't find anything to grab onto. I didn't know anything about anything. And that emotional intelligence gave me a framework to kind of orient myself to this next phase of my life. And creating a ripple effect. So I have a daughter, and I feel very strongly that, the way I live my life, the way I behave in front of her, the way I, kind of put myself out into the world is a mirror for her. And I believe that what I'm doing is creating a positive ripple effect for her and those that come after me by what I'm doing now. Okay, so this is the survey that I did. So when I started doing this, I was working with a couple of women, and then the truth was, I was like, I don't know what the general female physician public, what's going on with emotional intelligence in the general population of female physicians. So I created a survey with a bunch of different emotional intelligence themes. I sent it out to everybody. It wasn't particularly scientific, right? I just sent it to all my friends on Facebook, on Instagram, text messages. I asked people to share it with other people. So it's like sort of nationwide, but it's all mostly related to my network. But 120 women responded, which for me, that was an honor and very humbling that 120 women took time to take my survey. So, Sharon, as you were alluding to earlier, we as female physicians actually are very emotionally intelligent. And these 5 characteristics of emotional intelligence were the highest scores. And you see that empathy, almost 100% of female physicians reported being empathetic. And everyone reported high levels of self-awareness, self-interpretation, or the ability to have an accurate understanding of how people perceive you, emotional communication, or your ability to express your emotions. That doesn't necessarily mean in a healthy way, but you feel comfortable expressing them, and then self-advocacy. So I was like, okay, so we're female, as female physicians are emotionally intelligent, so why are we so unhappy? So then I started looking at other data. So over 60% of us reported feeling burnt out at least some of the time. 70% reported feeling imposter syndrome at least some of the time, and 92% reported being in survival mode at least some of the time. And I purposely didn't define these in the survey because I wanted you to answer based on however you interpreted it. So these are answers based on what the women felt like, how they identified. The interesting thing is only 13% of the women that responded who identified as mothers felt completely satisfied with the balance between medicine and motherhood. So I asked the question, how satisfied are you with how well you're balancing medicine and motherhood? Completely satisfied, somewhat satisfied, and then it went down from there. And of the women that responded indicating they were mothers, only 13% reported feeling completely satisfied. And of the 120 women that took the survey, only 18% felt completely satisfied with their lives as a whole. So obviously then I'm like, okay, so what about these women that are the 13 and 18%? What can I learn from them? Am I going too fast? Is this okay?
I'm fine. Is anybody
Okay.
else want to slow down? Good.
Okay.
Good.
So then the next thing I looked at was the prevalence of stress-related experiences among female physicians. So I gave you some statistics earlier about burnout, imposter syndrome, and survival mode. So these charts, I basically broke it down between how satisfied are you with life overall and how satisfied are you with your balance between medicine and motherhood. The bright green is completely satisfied, and then the dark green is everyone who reported less than completely satisfied. So on the left, the bright green is everyone that's completely satisfied with their lives. And on the right is everyone that's completely satisfied with medicine and motherhood in light green. I hope that makes sense. And the whole point of this is to show that even the women that reported feeling completely satisfied still reported having burnout, imposter syndrome. Interestingly, completely satisfied didn't really experience feeling in survival mode. But I guess the point is, it's not that these women are completely satisfied because their lives are stress-free and they walk around barefoot in meadows all day long. They still experience stress, but there's something else going on that's allowing them to rate their satisfaction as completely satisfied. So then based on all the questions I asked, based on how the percentages were and everything, I found 4 characteristics that were consistent among the women that reported feeling completely satisfied. And that's kind of where I want the bulk of what I talk about today to come from. So those 4 characteristics are regular self-care, effective ways of managing stress, an overall positive inner voice, and a clear picture for your life over the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, so this is the data to kind of prove that. So on the left, again, is satisfaction with life, and on the right is satisfaction with balancing medicine and motherhood. Bright green still corresponds to completely satisfied and dark green to not completely satisfied. And you'll just notice the women that reported feeling completely satisfied in both life and in medicine and motherhood overwhelmingly reported these 4 characteristics compared to their peers who reported less than complete satisfaction. So that to me was pretty significant. Despite this being a non-scientific study, this was compelling enough for me to say there's something here. So what I've done since then is kind of digging more into that and presenting these 4 things, not as some sort of, woo-woo, trendy thing, but like, hey, look, this is my data. This is your voice or people like you saying these things. There's going to be a lot of text on these slides. I don't want to take up too much time, like I said, but I just go into this stuff in more detail. So regular self-care is the non-negotiable practice that prevents us from feeling chronically depleted. So for you, it might be exercise. It might be making sure you get, 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep. It might be making sure you have a healthy breakfast. It might be going out with your friends on Friday night. It's something that we use as a way of restoring our energy. And without regular self-care, we deplete our energy, and that's what often leads us to feeling resentful and life feeling like an obligation. When you're able to pause and regularly give to yourself, you're able to notice kind of those early warning signs of feeling depletion before they lead to resentment and burnout. So I offered an action step here as a way of kind of making this useful. I would encourage anyone who feels like they may benefit from this to ask themselves what actually restores me. And I'm not saying that if watching TV is something that actually fills your cup, then that's appropriate. Binge watching Netflix just to, go numb is not a restoration activity, but what actually restores me is the question. What can I do? And then after doing that, I feel energized, I feel happy, I feel peaceful, I feel optimistic. That would be something that would be reasonable to incorporate into your regular life. And then communicate that to those that matter. So if, for example, you need exercise every day, that may mean talking with your spouse or your nanny or whoever to figure out a way to incorporate this. It may sound selfish. I hear the pushback of, well, I don't have time for this. It's like, yeah, but if 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 improving your quality of life is something that's important, then this is almost just as important as preventative medicine. So I said, build it into your daily life. Even little moments add up. So something for me is exercise is something that makes me feel better about myself, and I don't always have time. For example, I was on call last night, like I said, so I slept before and then went to work. But then what I do is I park as far away in the parking lot as I can, and I try to walk quickly into the hospital. So I'm at least getting my heart rate up a little bit. So even on a day when I can't dedicate, an hour to exercise, I'm still doing a little something that makes me feel like I'm not just in the grind. The next one is effective ways of managing stress. So managing stress or stress management is the ability to recognize stress early and respond in a way that restores emotional regulation. So some people confuse managing stress with self-care, and I would say self-care is more of like the preventative thing. Managing stress is the acute intervention. So in the moment when experiencing stress, can I recognize it quickly and can I de-escalate so that I can respond in a way that makes me more happy with how I responded. Without stress management, we may not recognize it. We may push stress down, swallow it, become numb, detach. Then it can accumulate, boil over into chronic burnout, overwhelm, dissatisfaction. With stress management, we can interrupt that cycle before it becomes our baseline, and we avoid staying stuck in just a constant stressful loop. The action step for this so this is actually something I spend a lot of time with working with like the women I work with. We go over like, well, what are your triggers? In what situations do you find yourself feeling triggered that causes you to kind of go offline or kind of come down from your prefrontal cortex down to your, fight, flight, freeze sort of thing. But an action step that may be helpful is the next time you notice yourself experiencing stress, if it's safe to do so, just take time to examine it. What's going on? What do you feel in your body? A lot of us feel, a tight jaw, fluttering in our chest. Maybe your palms are sweaty. Just have an idea of what it feels like when you're in that stressful moment. And the more time we spend being aware that we're stressed, the longer that space can become between feeling stressed and our reaction. Because what can happen is once you notice that you're feeling stressed, then you are a little more conscious to it. And with more consciousness to it, you're able to say, okay, how do I want to respond intentionally? Sorry, I know I'm going fast. I don't want to take up too much time. An overall positive inner voice was the third characteristic. This is the habitual inner narrative that we use to make sense of our experience. It's basically the way that we talk to ourselves. Without a positive inner voice, we can often become perfectionists. It sounds like us being high achievers and focusing harshly on our mistakes, ruminating on mistakes we made, having regret for it, talking to ourselves in ways we wouldn't necessarily talk to our closest friend or even our children. When we do not talk to ourselves in a positive light, it can increase the risk of having imposter feelings, a perceived lack of safety, difficulty with boundary setting. And most of us, from time to time are going to probably have negative thoughts about ourselves. But I think that the key here is the overall positive inner voice, the overall loving, compassionate way in which we talk to ourselves, in which we view ourselves. So the action step I would offer for a positive inner voice is something I like to call the daily visit with the mirror you. This is something that I just came up with postpartum, honestly, but I would encourage, like the women that I work with I'll say, every morning or every night or something, look at yourself in the mirror and focus on saying one positive thing to yourself, just one positive thing, and then one encouraging thing based on something from yesterday. So, maybe you yelled at your kid yesterday. So today you could say, hey, you're doing a really good job and you're working hard to be a good mom. Yesterday you made the mistake of yelling, but now you know how to do it differently today. And I believe in you, as an example. And then over time, as we habituate that into our daily actions, it becomes a little bit more like a regular thing that we do. And then finally, the last characteristic of those women was a clear picture of your life over the next 3 to 5 years. This is actually really important for me. And I think this is where I feel like a lot of women are starting to feel that kind of tug of like, is this it? What else is there to life? Like I said, you graduate residency or you start, you go immediately into attendinghood. We build, we work hard and we accumulate all these, check marks on our resumes and stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, what am I doing? What's the purpose of my life? What do I want for myself? Am I going in the direction that I want? Am I the same person that I was when I wanted these goals? So the clear picture is, or the picture of your life is sort of a working internal reference point for what we want our lives to feel like. And that allows us to make decisions based on how we want our life to be. So without a clear picture, it can look like saying yes to opportunities by default, being capable and successful, but feeling unsatisfied or even resentful again, because you're not necessarily doing what feels in alignment for you. And it can look like having no understanding of what you want. With a clear picture, we can be intentional about our decisions, about our boundaries based on our values. And when we live life aligned with our values, we get to choose how we live. The action step for this would be a values exercise. I'm sure lots of people have heard of this before, but you can Google, what are core values and, start with a list of like 10 of them that you like, wean it down to 5, and then pick your top 3 values. And then ask yourself, does my life currently align with these 3 values? As an example, and in the spirit of vulnerability, my 3 values are being courageous, having integrity, and then my spirituality. And so when I am focused on those, decisions that I have to make often become a lot more clear because I can evaluate whether or not one route, one of the decision avenues fits or doesn't fit with my values. Once I started looking at these 4 characteristics, I realized that these are sort of interconnected building blocks that build upon each other. So regular self-care is like that preventative medicine that I talked about. It allows us to be proactive and taking care of our needs. And then effective stress management allows us to kind of navigate that acute stress, kind of come back down once we do get triggered or over, kind of past that point of reactivity. The positive inner voice ensures we remain compassionate and supportive of ourselves, which is important to continue growing. And then the clear picture of our lives creates the roadmap so that we can reduce the risk of kind of just tumbling through. So when we're taking care of our needs through regular self-care, when we're not letting stress run our lives by having good stress management skills, when we're talking to ourselves with loving acceptance, with a positive inner voice, and when we're maintaining a clear understanding about what we want for our lives, then you fill your cup. Stress becomes a trusted mentor because it can teach you things. You can guide yourself even in the face of uncertainty, and you can feel completely satisfied. So that's sort of my little presentation. I do want to say that when I first started talking about this stuff, I honestly felt kind of silly. I was like, oh my God, are people going to judge me? I had my own imposter syndrome stuff going on. But then I realized like, no, this data is like, this is my data from my survey. Women responded. So it's not like I'm just making stuff up. This isn't just some trendy thing. This is data based on women like me who took time to respond to this survey. And that made me feel really peaceful because I realized you don't have to blow up your life and change everything to be happy. You can take small steps to move yourself in a direction that feels more satisfied. As I showed in that one first slide initially, female physicians do have emotional intelligence. It's just that we may not be applying it intentionally toward ourselves, which, right, we're always taking care of other people before we take care of ourselves. And this is my soapbox moment. I, myself included, the mom guilt is real. And I'll just say taking care of yourself with intentional emotional intelligence, it's not selfish, nor is it avoidance. It's what allows you to show up for the world, especially when it feels hard. So when you take care of yourself, when you show up for yourself, then you can show up for others. And that's the end. I'm going to stop sharing. I did
Lindsay,
it.
yeah, no, you did a great job. It's a lot of information there. Um, for the audience, I know some people are just coming in. Mona, I know that you just came in. Talk to like, how do I say this? You ladies came here for a reason tonight. Maybe you're feeling stressed. Do you want to talk about that at all? I could stop the recording. How do you want to work here? Would you guys prefer that I stop the recording? You can put it in the chat or just unmute yourself. You know, we have Lindsay. Lindsay, before we stop the recording, do me a favor. If people want to work with you, how would they do that?
Oh, so I have a website. I just recently created a website. It's not the greatest. So I would say go to that. And then in the top right corner, there's like a menu that you can kind of look through stuff, and there's a contact me page. So my website is kind of with a nod to my anesthesia background. It's called theauthenticpulse.com. So that would probably be the easiest way.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, let's stop recording for a little bit because I think people do better without recording.